Welcome to the Boldest You podcast. I'm your host, Carrie, and I'm thrilled to bring you real conversations with bold women and men. In this podcast, we dive deep into their stories, exploring what drives their courage, shapes their vision, and fuels their desire to leave a lasting impact. These are honest, vulnerable, and inspiring moments that celebrate what it means to be bold. Let's discover their legacies together. Welcome, Chuck. I'm so excited to have you joining me today and to learn more about you. To get us started, could you just share a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, Carrie, thanks for having me on your show. My name's Chuck Mullen. I am the regional leader for the Great Lakes region of Eide Bailly, and I joined the firm via a merger about a year and a half ago. And I am in my 31st year of public accounting. I'm married. I have two grown kids and one granddaughter. So I'm an empty nester, living the life, having fun, and having fun at Eide Bailey.
Adorable. How old is your
Uh,
granddaughter?
6 months.
Oh, that's so special.
Yeah.
That's such a
uh,
fun age. Well, exciting. I'm glad to have this conversation with you and to get to know more about some of those things that you just mentioned. And as we start every episode with the whole theme of the boldest you, can you tell me about a time when you've had to be bold?
so that is a funny question, and I didn't pre-think about a story. So I'm sure after the podcast I'll think of something real good. But I'm I'm not lying when I tell you that I feel like I have to do something very bold every day. I'm gonna guess most people are in that boat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, even just I'll even applaud people for getting out of bed and going to work in the morning is sometimes a bold statement, right?
Yes.
Because we don't always feel like doing what our ambitions tell us we should be doing. So, but I would also say that in a leadership role, you're just I would say every few hours, you're having to do something that's probably outside your comfort zone, and that requires boldness. And if that's where you find yourself, if you find yourself taking bold actions every day, you're probably in a pretty good place.
Mm.
Probably growing because you're probably outside your comfort zone on a continuous basis. As far as an actual bold, I got to make a couple bold phone calls after this podcast.
Well, there you go.
Um,
You're living
I've
in
got
the dream already.
Yeah, and I would say bold usually means something has probably gone wrong, right?
Mm.
Usually when you got to do something bold, it usually means you're having to take some sort of action that is not fun but necessary. And so I'll have to make a call to a client later who's not following our protocol
Mm.
and explain, unfortunately, it's put the project behind. So there's that. I need to call another person who hasn't followed through on something. So unfortunately, that's a negative story. I have two negative stories of calls I've got to make later this afternoon, but that's just part of the day of leadership.
Yeah, I think what I hear in that example is I think sometimes when you hear the word bold, you think big, and you just demonstrated how that's not always true. That bold can be these small actions that you have to take every single day, especially as a leader, like you mentioned, those phone calls. I've certainly had those where
Yep.
you get that pit in your stomach and you're like, okay, I have to do this, and you're better for it when you do it, right? You have
Right.
to you have to get through it. But I just love that idea of that, like bold to you also means, yeah, these small things that I have to do every single day as a leader. And I know you said this is your 31st tax season. When you first started in accounting, did you see yourself being a regional leader of like a whole region of a firm? Or like where did you see
No.
yourself when you were first starting?
No, and it's funny, and the theme of bold. I think of bold as doing anything that you don't really want to do at that
Hmm.
moment, right? And
Yeah.
that's moment to moment. So if you think about it, Carrie, think about maybe how many bold actions you just took today, things you
Hmm.
probably did not want to do, but um, it's even syncing up. the time of day too. It may be 2 o'clock, and you were in the mood to do that at 10 o'clock, but now you're not in the mood to do it at 2 o'clock. But you have to do it at 2 o'clock.
Yep.
That's a bold step. The opposite of bold is bolting and saying, uh,
Mm.
coming up with an excuse or saying, I'm not feeling well, or I can't do this, or and the world will let you off the hook, but you won't let yourself off the hook. You'll know that you should have acted, but you did not. So I think any of that is a bold action. So going back to your question, when I started in public accounting, I really did not think I would be doing it for any longer than 2 years, 2 years max. And I hated it so bad when I started. I started in December of 1995. And I was 21 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. And yet, the place I worked for, which turned out to be a great little firm, but they didn't really have a training program. So they just kind of threw me into these files and said go, and they had expectations that I would produce things. Well, I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't know anything about anything, and I was very under equipped for the job. I had never had interned or anything like that, so I just went in full time to public accounting right out of college. And after about, I would say, 8 weeks in, I was still miserable. Every day was worse than it's like the movie Office Space. Every day is worse than
Oh,
the day
yes.
before.
Yep.
It went on and on. What was interesting about it though is, it's funny how long the human mind can take misery. You can bear it. It went on these were 11-hour days. These were
Mhm.
Saturdays of a job that I hated, that people hated me for doing the job because I wasn't doing it right. I was costing the firm money. I was overhead, the rumor was I was going to get fired soon. We were 2, 3 months in, and I just stuck it out. I didn't have an off ramp. And I look
Mm.
back on that and I go, in retrospect, I'd like to think that I stuck it out because I'm tough, but I didn't have any other options. I didn't have a safety net. Like there was no other place for me to go. I'd committed to this job. So it's not like I could quit after 3 months and go, oh man, scratch that. Let's go do something else. So I just hung in there. I hung in there and I kept showing up. And I'm going to tell you, Carrie, about probably took me about 4 months, maybe about 5 months, but around May of 96, I started to turn a corner.
Mm.
And I remember by June of 96, we're about 6 months into my job, I actually completed a project with very little oversight, and I was so proud of myself. But I had been slugging at it, just slugging at it. I was taking work papers home at night after an 11-hour day and just looking at the file, going, what am I missing here? Why am I not getting this? You stick with something, and that's a bold action, because the last thing I wanted to do after working a 12-hour shift of a job I hated was to go home and look more at it. But I didn't have any other, I could not afford to get fired from this job, and that was very much on the table. So I would say around June, I started to turn that corner. And once I turned the corner, I said, I don't know what happened to me, but these last 6 months, I've been in such misery. All I want to do is obliterate this. And I was like a dog with a bone. As soon as I started to turn the corner and realized there was a 1 millionth of a chance that I may actually be good at this job, I just started running with that. I started studying for the CPA. I was a maniac.
Mm.
And then things just started really clicking. And I would say by my first year anniversary with the firm, I was considered a star in the firm. I mean, I went from, just the lowest, the worst of the worst. That year, 1996, I will never see improvement in my career at that trajectory as I
Yeah.
saw in that first year. So, what's been fulfilling to me in public accounting is watching other 21, 22, 23 year olds enter the workforce, and I know exactly where they're at. I know exactly what they're
Mhm.
thinking. So I
Yeah.
think that's my bold story though. Is I hung in there. I did not
Hmm.
quit. I cannot believe that 30 years and 2 weeks later, I'm still at the same company. Like, I
Yes,
cannot believe that. And I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of it.
you should be.
So,
Do
yeah,
you accredit the like time that you put in after those 12-hour days, like going home and continuing to
absolutely.
grind, like that is what helped you turn that corner?
Absolutely. It's really hard. It's hard for me to tell a young person that they almost have to find it on their own. Like,
Hmm.
if I tell them, oh, this is what you got to do. Hey, when you leave here at 8 p.m. tonight, take those files out and just, or log on and just study at night. They know that part.
Yeah.
They know that will help. But I absolutely attribute that to what I would call early stardom in public accounting.
Mm.
Is once I turned that corner, I started getting more challenging work. And I said to myself, I am not going back to square one because this stuff's too challenging for me. So I remember being on the job a year and a half, 2 years into the job. I would have work papers all over my basement floor on a Saturday night at 2 in the morning trying to figure out a project. Now, I know that sounds insane, but that's one way to turn 2 years into 5 years experience. So by the time I was at 2 years, I mean, I had gone from the worst guy in the world. We made a mistake hiring him. We should fire him to this is our rising star. Let's give him everything he needs to do a great job. And then I ended up becoming a partner within 4.5 years of joining. So I made partner 4.5 years after joining in the spring of 2000s. Um, that would be, yeah, my advice would be if you really want it,
Hmm.
you just work at it. That's all. Just work
Yeah,
at it.
I was gonna ask, as you were mentioning that, it makes me think of course, all the young staff that you bring in. You mentioned you see that as these interns or new associates come in. Do you feel like that experience has changed the way that you lead young people and just how you're able to
Absolutely.
relate to them?
Yeah, you ask good questions, by the way. I think I've told you that
Thank you.
before, but yeah, these are questions I haven't thought of. It absolutely impacts. It 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 definitely made me a more understanding leader. I think there's a lot of leaders that came into public accounting who were naturally good at accounting.
Mm,
So I don't know that they understand everybody's plight, right?
sure.
I came in and I was terrible at it. So I was in, but the other thing too is I don't let people off the hook that easy either
Hmm.
because I know what's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, but without a doubt, it has changed. It definitely affected the way I would lead people.
Mm, okay. I know I've heard this story, but I think our listeners will enjoy it. So you said you're terrible at accounting. So
Sure.
why did you go into accounting in the first place?
um, I kept kicking that can down the road. When I got to college, I was in serious need of money. Um, and I became an RA, so I was able to get my room and board
Mm,
paid. I was very lucky. I want to say I was very fortunate. My dad, God rest his soul, was a professor at the University of Akron, so I did get free
mm.
tuition. So
Wow, that's great.
yeah, it's huge, huge. I look back on it and I go, man, what a benefit that was. I probably took it for granted, but I still was on the hook for room and board. Mom and dad weren't helping with anything; they couldn't, and
Hmm.
that's totally fine. So I became an RA and was able to get my room and board paid. But the RA job has a term limit, so I had to cram a bunch of college credits because I needed to time my graduation with them kicking me out of the dorms because I wasn't going to have free room and board anymore.
Hmm.
So I graduated in 3.5 years in a 4-year program only because I crammed credits while I was getting free housing. And see, where in the heck am I going with this story? Oh, so long story short, life was coming at me fast in college, 3.5 years. A year in, I'm like, I got to declare a major. All right, I'll go to the business school. And I think I declared finance or something. I get over to the College of Business. I thought, I think the hardest degree is probably accounting. If while I'm here, I might as well get the hardest degree. Just do something that is totally unlike me because this is not me. Accounting, if I could master accounting what else could I do? I said, and accounting's kind of a gateway to other things. You can do a lot of things with it.
Hmm.
Whereas some of the other degrees in the College of Business, I wasn't sure of. So I said, oh, what the heck? Let's go all in on accounting. And I struggled through, um, was able to graduate with, I got A's and B's, but I was just not equipped for the real world. The
Hmm.
education that I got, unfortunately, just wasn't tailored for, I don't know why, it just wasn't tailored for what a small public accounting firm does every day for its clients. And so I, that's how I got to accounting is I said, let me go where, I thought at the time, I, I think my skills may be more in marketing, maybe more in writing and journalism. And I thought, why don't I do something different? Why why go compete with a bunch of other people that are really good at that? Maybe I go into a major where they're not that good at that, which are my natural abilities, and I learn what they do. And then I
Mm.
use my natural abilities to work my way up the ladder. That's exactly what happened.
Wow. I love that perspective that I've never
But
thought about it that way.
it was a painful road. It was a very painful road. I'm not sure I'm not sure I recommend that, but it's a backward way of looking at the world. If you're good at one thing, maybe you go over here and
Yeah.
take those skills with you. And if you can just learn what they're doing, you now have a superpower that they don't have, right?
Yeah,
Whereas over
absolutely.
here, everybody could write and talk and all this and that. Yeah, right. So
Yeah, no, I really like that perspective of just, and I think it's something I think about a lot with the young students that we work with. One, how you mentioned college, unfortunately, it only teaches you so much. There's so much extra when you get into the quote unquote real world that they can't teach you in college,
right,
whether it is the actual technical skills, because every company does something a little bit different or interacts with their clients in a different way, or I think I see so much on like the soft skill side, right? Where there's only so much that they can teach you in a classroom versus
right,
the soft skills that you have to learn with experience and some of that grit that you mentioned of putting
right.
in the time and being committed and experiencing life in that sense. But
Right.
also you mentioned the things that you were really naturally good at, the more the marketing maybe or the communication side, and how you were going to use those superpowers to climb the ladder. So as you have climbed the corporate ladder from that
Hmm.
perspective, moving into a partner and being a part of a larger firm and taking on the regional leader role and all of those things, how would you say your superpower of communication or marketing, if you want to call it that, has impacted your role in that way?
Well, yeah, great. So the first way it impacted was very early in my career. I found that I was able to talk with the clients pretty
Mm,
well. And then the first technical win in that area, though, was I did a lot of audited financial statements early in my career, and I had to write footnotes to the statements.
mm,
We still do that as accountants. We write notes,
yeah.
and I could write some really good notes to the statements, so they looked really nice and professional, and I could write good letters to clients. That's back when we wrote letters and that. So I that was my first hurrah. But I would say my second hurrah was probably about midway through my career. I started doing a lot of seminars. And what I would do is I would do free seminars in downtown Akron and give free lawyer education credits through the Ohio Supreme Court. I was able to give away 3 free credits
Very
for
cool.
education. And so I was doing, there was a point where I was doing one seminar every 2 months for about 2 years.
Mm,
I was on that clip. I was doing free seminars. And that really turned my career because my name was getting out as somebody who's, you know, downtown
yeah,
Akron doing these seminars, giving out lawyers their credits. Of course, the lawyers are now calling me with tax questions and that. So,
absolutely. Yep.
yeah,
How did you get into doing those seminars? Was it just something that you identified as like a passion project, or did someone reach out to you?
I just decided I was going to do it. I just said, hey, I think, I want to build a book of business. I got to get my name out there. What's one way I could do that? And I thought, well, maybe I could give some presentations.
Yeah.
So I put together a presentation. I found out how to get credits for accountants and lawyers and all that stuff. And then um, now I think we just, as a firm, I think we just sent out like a mass email or a mass
Mm.
letter to people telling them to sign up. But we'd get 80 to 100 people with those things. I mean,
Wow.
those were good turnouts. They'd be like 2 hour presentations on the latest tax acts and all that stuff, tax
Yeah.
savings and yeah,
Wow. That's
yeah.
impressive. And
Um,
I think about this concept of taking like communication in the sense of, accounting, or we talk about in the technology side a lot, these concepts that to people who don't do it every single day, it feels complicated, right? For someone who's not an
right,
accountant, I can
right,
I can understand the basics. I have to do my taxes every year,
right.
but the in-depth pieces is harder. And so something we always tell students is if you are someone who can communicate those concepts in an easier
Oh,
term for people, like you are setting yourself up for success. And it sounds like that's what you were able to do for these people. You were able to take those concepts and
there you go.
simplify them. Yeah.
Yeah, I only got good at accounting through brute force, repetition.
Mm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally using the wrong side of my brain to do this profession. And so because of that, I can relate to the clients really well
Yeah.
because I'm not a natural. So when they when they are when they are trying to ask a question, I can almost figure out what they're really trying to ask. Whereas I think some of the more natural accountants, people that were naturals at it, they may get frustrated with the client, they may get or they may just it's so second nature to them that they just
Yeah.
can't follow what the client's trying to ask. But when you were as bad at me as accounting, um, you can relate to people in all wherever they're at.
Yeah. Do you
Uh,
think that is a skill that you can coach out of natural accountants, or I guess maybe coach in the sense of like someone who is a more natural accountant? Like, do you think that's something that over time they can adapt to understanding more, or is some of it just like you said, that natural inclination of I was just as bad as you at one point? Like, I get where you're going with this.
so you're I don't know because I think what you're asking is can you coach patience, right? Because
That's a good way of
if
saying it. Yeah.
if you were a natural and you had a client asking you really dumb questions, you would have to have the patience
Yeah.
to do that. Whereas I don't need that patience because my mind already is thinking like the client
Yeah.
already. I'm just leaps and bounds ahead because of brute force and repetition. But
Mhm.
it's a weird thing to think about. If you teach someone to be, I don't know, to be patient, and we sure do try. I will say that.
It
Um,
is and it's an interesting concept when you say it in that way of can you coach patience, because I feel like patience isn't it doesn't seem like a skill, right? It's more of a are you a patient person
uh,
or are you not?
uh,
So it is interesting to think about of is that something you can coach someone?
the easiest thing, Carrie, that I can think of, though, beyond patience is empathy. And when I say
Mm,
empathy, I'm being real simple. I'm
yeah,
saying, can you squarely put your feet in the shoes of the client?
yeah,
If you can just do that, I don't care if you're natural, not natural, if you can just put yourself in their shoes and look at yourself as a vendor to them or a service provider
hmm,
to them, you're going to be just fine.
yeah,
Um, I think the empathy part is probably the the one skill that I find myself teaching more and more and more to
okay,
people all throughout because I would say for the most part throughout my career, the people I've worked with, I would say overall have been pretty good with clients and have been I don't think do get annoyed with them or their questions or anything like that. I just think there's sometimes a lack of understanding. And
mm,
I th- I'll give you an example. This past week a client had was upset about something and I went to the person on the account and I said and I kind of I went through a kind of a checklist. Did we do this? Did we do that? Yeah, we did this. I can't figure out what he's upset about. So then I said, all right, put yourself in his shoes. Now, what would you have done differently? And
Mm.
that did come out with another answer. So, well, we could have met with him in June instead of September and told him that. And I'm like, yeah, I think you're right. But I think sometimes, we go home and we have our own vendors in our own lives, right? We
Yep.
have the customer service people that we call on. What do we expect of them? What do we expect at the car dealership? What do we expect at the repair shop? What do we expect? And are we able to provide that to our clients? Because that's exactly what they're looking at with us. And they're
Mm.
and they're paying a really good dime for it.
Yeah, that is, I like what you said about when we go home, we have our own customer service people, right?
Absolutely.
And I don't love dealing with them either, right? I get frustrated when I call on the phone, but I think that's a great way of teaching someone to think about it. And I like the way that you asked, like what could we have done
Yeah.
differently to help them think? Have you found through all the time that you have mentored people, because I'm sure there are
Yeah.
many in your career, like is that one of the best ways to teach empathy? Are there other things that you've
Yeah.
utilized to help people understand that concept?
Empathy. No, I mainly stick with that one. If
Yeah,
you can put yourself in someone else's shoes, to me, that is the shortcut to empathy. That is
yeah,
empathy. I mean,
hmm
empathy isn't even necessarily always nice or friendly or anything like that.
yeah,
It's just simply, can you absolutely relate with the person you're talking with?
yeah,
Um, and Now, sometimes that even empathy can be challenging to a really natural accountant because um, even if I said to someone, well, what would your expectation be of the accounting firm you hired? Well, they're so smart at accounting,
yeah,
it probably wouldn't be that high or so, you know what I mean? Like
exactly.
you
Yes.
gotta you gotta put yourself in the shoes of what don't ask yourself what would be your expectation of your accounting firm, but say what would be your expectation if you took your car in for repair and you
hmm
don't know, all you know is there's warning lights and all you know is it's not starting every time. And you probably got 3 emails from the dealership that said try this, try that, but were the emails complicated? Did you want to read the emails or would you rather someone call and talk with you? Think of it
Mm.
in those terms. If you can think of it in those terms, that's what our clients are going through with us. I think that's what we got to teach.
Yes, that you worded it so perfectly. And as you were talking, I was reflecting on my experience as a leader as I have, over the last couple of years now, started to lead a team. And I think that the way that you worded it in that empathy is, I think, really challenging when you're naturally gifted at something or good at something, you've honed those skills, and then you're starting to work with someone who isn't. And like I said, like in my role, I see that like event planning and programming is something that has always come really natural to me. I
Mhm.
have other people on my team who are good at it, but maybe think of it differently than I do. And that's a space that I've had to take 2 steps back and go, okay, their brain does not work the way that mine does. How do
Yeah.
I recommunicate this or how do I share this differently with them that helps them see it in a different way? Or even for them to teach me a little bit where I'm like, oh, I never would have thought it of that way. And so I like that mindset change of yes, don't think of it as you in that shoe because that person doesn't know as much as you do. Are there
So
other skills? Go
you
ahead.
say you're a natural at event planning? Did you say?
Yes. At least I
See,
like to think I am.
I will tell you this. I didn't realize that I've defined event planning as the hardest job in the world. I've told people that
Interesting. Okay.
multiple times. Anytime anyone's doing a golf outing or just
Mm.
anything, even those seminars were as far as I could go. Like beyond a seminar, I could never have planned an event, and I would never. I'm not even sure I'd want to try. I'm not even sure I'd want to try. There's always a detail that's the
hmm
linchpin to everything else, and you leave that
Yep.
detail out, and the whole thing is ruined. And I think that would make me nuts.
And that's my one of my favorite things about it is those details. And
Uh-huh.
it's funny, like you were talking about why you chose accounting. And when I was in high school, I've always been someone like I was in clubs and organizations, and I was the person who would want to organize the meetings and would want to come up with the different activities that we were going to do and put all those details together. And then I went to college and I thought I was going to be an accountant like yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very different
skill set, right? And it wasn't that I mean, I enjoyed math, and so I think that's why I chose accounting, but it wasn't until I fell back into the HR space and campus recruiting specifically that I started to figure out, oh, all those things I was really good at in high school naturally can
There you
actually
go.
fall really well into my job that I do every single day. And
Right.
even now, as my role has shifted, I still find ways to, like, I don't do as many events as I maybe used to when I was a campus recruiter, but I have found ways to still bring those things in. And is it creating a
Hmm.
program and thinking through every intentional detail of how do I make this person's experience the best, or how do I think of every person that's going to be there, and every small, like, there's so many things about event planning, like you were mentioning those small details that I probably just think of really naturally, that yeah, to someone else, and
Hmm.
many other people in my life that are always like, how did you even think of that, or what, like, where did that come from? I'm like, I don't know, we all just have these natural things about us. And again, for, like you said, so many people in public accounting, of course, that's accounting. And I'm glad we have those people, because I am not one of them. And we need those people that can lean into their natural abilities, or the people like yourself who are willing to put in that grit and that time to
Yeah,
become a natural at it. At this point, it probably does feel more natural to you than it did 30 some years ago.
without
But
a doubt.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's, yeah,
And
so fascinating to think
I
of it
like to
in that
say
way.
I'd be a total idiot if I wasn't good at it after 30 years, right? But it is nice. It is so nice to be able to tell people, hey, 30 years experience. I've never seen anything like that. Or 30 years experience. I
Yeah.
see this. It is nice to be able to own that. There's
Yes,
something to that.
absolutely.
And so I would tell anybody that um, unless they absolutely hate public accounting and they've given it at least a year, I would say stick with it. It's a great, great industry. And
Yeah.
I'm saying that from a guy who would have done anything else than public accounting after 3 months into it. I would have done anything else if it was an option to me. That's the turnaround I've had with it.
Yeah. As a parent, with someone, you said you have grown children, was that something that you instilled in your children too? Like when they were starting their career search and going through all those, I'm sure as a parent, the life phases that you watch your child go through and recognize, oh, I've been there, I've done that. But was that something that you shared with them too?
You ask such good questions. So what's really strange is one of my children became a certified public accountant, and
Oh,
I had nothing to do with it. So my approach with parenting, me and my wife both, is I never want to tell my kids what to do.
mm-hmm.
When I was growing up, I don't think my parents did this, but I had friends whose parents did this. I'm being serious. I don't think my parents did this, but I do. I, they would the parents, I don't know, it was just cringeworthy. They would
Sure.
just overbearing. Oh, you should go do
Yeah.
this, you should go do that. I wanted to be the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
So as my kids got into high school, I was hands off, man. I didn't talk anything about what they should do.
Yeah.
uh, my son, who became a CPA, wanted to be an air traffic controller, and I
Oh, wow.
supported him 100%. I was like, that sounds great, that's your passion, you go do it. And I knew that there was a rough road for him, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't I didn't open my big mouth. I wanted him to find out on his own. And the hard road to hoe with that is you have to get into a lottery to go to Oklahoma City to get trained, and it's
Yeah.
just it's you may sit around for a couple of years waiting for your ticket to get called, and then which airport are you going to work out of, and all this and that. I think he got about 6 months into the thought process. And I remember he and I were on a walk one night, and he said, I think I'm going to go into accounting. I said, really? Do tell. Um, and what's interesting, he's actually a natural accountant. He was good from the very start. And once I learned he was going into public accounting, I taught him everything I know.
Of course,
So
got to share
of
your
course I did.
secrets.
I did.
Yes.
But I never once cajoled him into doing it. Never. I
Yeah.
would I would never do that. No. my
Yeah.
daughter my daughter same, she went into physical therapy, occupational therapy.
Mm.
So but I would never, yeah,
Yeah.
I never imposed any of that on my kids.
I think that's a great approach of letting people discover who they are, because
Yeah.
I think as I even think of, as I look at like my friends or, again, working with different people in the environment that I do, I run a program where we bring in college aged women and partner them with a mentor from Eide Bailly. And even in there, there's always things or people that I'm like, oh, I think they'd be really good if they did that in my head,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's natural to think those things about people. We see what people are good at. We see the things that they're maybe, drawn towards. At the end of the
Hmm.
day, now after 6 years of this program, the people at the beginning that I would have said that like are probably doing something completely different of what I would have said. Oh,
Right.
that's what you should do. And so I
Right.
think it's so important to let people that are in that career phase like explore and question and ask. And I even love the example of your son pursuing something and figuring out on his own, okay, this is maybe not what I was expecting or not what I want to do, and finding his way to his passion. Because people always ask like, what's your dream job? And I think for some people they maybe know that answer. Other people, I think that's a lifelong journey to figure out what is your dream job.
I mean, I gotta believe 5 to 10% know their dream job. I'm saying with 30 years experience that of dealing with people, no, that it's a low percentage, um,
Hmm.
because everything else is just a job. It's what you
Yep.
make out of it. It's what you make of it. I honestly, Carrie, think had I went to work at McDonald's out of college, that I probably would have stuck it out with McDonald's, and I'd probably be CFO of McDonald's or whatever by now.
Hey,
I would have
there's a
climbed.
dream for you. Yeah.
Well, but there's something to be said about making a decision and then running with it and just
Yeah.
running with it. Unless the cards are all stacked against you. You
Sure.
get
Yes.
there are those situations where you go into a job and it's just like maybe the people are unethical or something,
Yes,
whatever.
exactly. There's exceptions to it.
There's
Yep.
exceptions, but if it's a fair playing field, I would tell most people, unless you absolutely hate it after 6 months to a year, give it 6 months to a year,
Hmm.
unless you make it your own and own it.
Hmm.
And there's
Yep.
something, and opportunities will come to you from
Yes.
that job. Maybe there are other jobs and other companies, that's fine. But use this as your launching pad. And
Hmm.
and I used mine as a launching pad to nowhere except up. Like I never launched to another company. I just kept going in the same company. So
Hey, and I think it's commendable. I mean, like you said, the launching pad of whether it is up in the same place or it's, to something else, but even in the jobs that I didn't enjoy. And like I did a tax internship and it was not my favorite thing in the world. I was not good at it and pretty quickly figured out. But I look back at that experience and there was so much that I learned from that experience, whether it was about myself or I even think about, when I first graduated college, I went into a role in benefits knowing that it maybe wasn't where I wanted to be, but it was a job and it was experience. And there's so many things now that I can talk about benefits really differently with someone who's 21, 22 than I
mhm,
would have been able to if I didn't take that job. Yes, it eventually was my launching pad into my current role and things, but there was so much that I learned in that experience. And so, like
mhm,
you said, as long as I think that if you're in something and like you said, there's not unethical things or some of those other issues that of course I wouldn't want people to stay in. I think really committing to where you're at, like be where your feet are at and learn from that experience and take it to whether it's the next thing or like you said, to you might find yourself after 6 months turning that curve like you did and really enjoying the work that you're doing and make that
mhm,
like your career out of it. So I think there's so much wisdom in that of being where you're at and just embracing that whatever is in front of you, whether it's McDonald's or public accounting, and all the above. But and the topic of dream job, is there something, if you were not an accountant, like let's say you retire tomorrow, money is no issue, is there something that you would
mhm.
do?
Yeah, I think so. I would. Sounds crazy. I would love to host a daytime talk show, like
Ooh, tell me
or
more.
something. Just anything. Any type of show that's kind of light,
Yeah.
that has guests, and you sit at a desk and interview people. I
Yeah.
think that would be a lot of fun to me.
What
Um,
type of guests would you want to interview? Like, would you go more like business, pop culture, all of the above? What type of guests would you want to talk to?
Business, politics, and sports would
Mm,
be pretty good.
yeah.
And also comedians. It'd be nice to have comedians on the show. They're always funny.
So great. Yes. Chuck, I'm invested in your daytime talk show.
That's
So
so
if this
funny.
becomes a reality, you have a
I did.
listener and a
I
watcher.
I did not say the show would be any good. I said I would enjoy. I would enjoy it. I'm not sure the audience would enjoy it, but I would enjoy it. But um, no, I think that would be a dream job. The I also think I also think some of these NFL and college football coaches have dream jobs. Those are dream jobs. Be able
Mm,
to coach a team at a high
yeah.
level.
Yeah.
I think those are dream jobs. But a lot of the dream jobs that are out there are very scarce, very scarce. Like I had a
Hmm.
friend growing up who wanted to grow up and he wanted to be an astronaut. And
Wow.
I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like, dude, that's you better really want that because the odds are so against you. It's
Yeah.
just so scarce. And a lot of the dream jobs are like that. And that's why I say to some people, hey, give what you're doing a chance and see what happens next.
Yeah.
You don't have to figure it
Definitely.
all out right now. Just start being great at what you're doing and then see what develops from there. Maybe you'll still be there like me 30 years later enjoying it, or maybe you're going to go do something else with it.
Yeah.
But
And I think the concept of a dream job too is, I mean, the word dream is in there for a reason, right? Where I think so many people, myself included, sometimes forget that the grass is not always greener. Like you get into if
oh,
the chance came along and you got that dream job, there's still going to be something that frustrates you, or there's still going to be a challenge, and maybe that challenge is more exciting to you than what you're currently doing. But it isn't always you get into your dream job and then all of a sudden it's magical and everything is fixed, and so I like that idea of, like you said, like give what you're doing a chance because it could turn into your dream job. It could turn into that thing that you really enjoyed. And I remember someone telling me the concept of like, instead of thinking of your dream job, like think about what's a great day at work. Like, what does that look like for you? And think about that. Like, yes, maybe if the role that you're in, you can't say after you, like you said, you give it a chance. Like if you can no longer say, I have great days at work and here's why, then maybe that's your launch pad into something that would bring you more. But instead of always focusing on the dream, just, hey, what's a good day at work for me? Like, what does that look like? So I'm gonna ask
yeah.
you that, Chuck. What's a good day at work look like for you?
A good day, I'll tell you what, a good day for work for me, I would say simply is an unscheduled calendar.
Mm,
And the reason that is I find opportunities are popping up every day. People are calling every day. It is so nice to be available when those things happen, when those
yeah.
opportunities fly, or sometimes something will happen in a day that just needs some time and some focus. Like I
Hmm.
may I may need to call two or three different people to resolve something, and you can only do those on an unscheduled day, you know?
Yeah.
So that to me is a perfect day, is a day with very few appointments on it so that I can
Hmm.
be available to help people. My
Mm,
my favorite thing to be is a problem solver. I like to take
hmm.
people's hardest problems, whether it's in business or whatever, and try to resolve the problem. And it's often hard to do that with a tight schedule.
Yes, it is. I relate to that feeling. And as also someone who loves to be a problem solver, I agree. I think sometimes you need that freedom of time to be able to talk through the solutions and think about it. And like you said, sometimes it's calling multiple people or reaching out to your resources or digging into something a little bit more to get to that problem solve. But it's a good feeling when you can put the bow on it and you can say, oh, I
Yeah.
fixed this, I've solved it, especially with you like working with clients, like you said. I'm sure that's so rewarding to be able to give them that sense of peace of like, we've got it
Mhm.
figured out, like we're here for you.
By the way, I've got one other thing I want to share with you, and then I have a bold story, a
Ooh,
bold,
okay.
not a personal story, but a bold um, piece of advice to your
Yeah.
listeners. So first of all, the story, your questions have made me think back to the last 30 years, and sometimes when you're in your own job, you rise to a level where you can control every aspect of that company.
Mm-hmm.
So, or 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 a lot of aspects of the company, and that's a whole different arena that I don't think a lot of people think about on their first week on the job.
Yeah, definitely
Um,
not.
and it doesn't take as long as people think. Once once you're good and once you're helpful to people and once people know they can depend on you, you become super valuable, like almost irreplaceable. When you
Mm-hmm.
become helpful to others within the firm, and that's the word, be helpful. When you
Yeah.
are helpful to others, you rise really, really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And in my first firm, which was about 25 people, I got to a level where I was very bored there, but I didn't want to leave it. So I was in a position to merge it. And I merged it
Mm.
up and took all my friends and all our clients and we merged up into a firm called Apple Growth Partners. That was a better firm than the one I merged from. And then became managing partner of Apple Growth Partners several years later. We grew that, grew that, grew that. I got a little bored there and we merged up into Eide Bailly, and
Mm-hmm.
I coordinated that merger as well. I will say this, and I'm not just saying this, I promise this, Eide Bailly is by far the best place I've ever worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes say, I almost wish I would have just gone back and started at Eide Bailly 30 years ago. I could have saved us all a lot of time, right? Um, that when we talk about a dream job, I will say, compared to the first 28 years of my career, these have been the best 2 years of my career with Eide
Mm.
Bailly. And if anyone were to ask, I can name two reasons. One is the people. Love the people at Eide Bailly. Haven't met one person. I'm still waiting. I'm still trying to find out if there's a jerk that works at Eide Bailly because I haven't met that person yet. I've met a lot of people at Eide Bailey. I like everybody I've met. Everybody that I know with that we merged in with says the same thing. I mean, these people are great at Eide Bailey. Two of the resources, just the breadth of knowledge within Eide Bailey, it's unbelievable. So, um, that's one way you can shape a career is you go into a company, get into a position of influence, which doesn't take that long if you work
Mm-hmm.
at it and then contort the company to go a place that you want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that twice. I got bored and instead of leaving it, I just contorted it and said, let's go this
Yeah.
way. Let's get better. So,
And I think I love that way of the influence. And I think about that even I think so many people think that that has to come with a certain title, right? I have to get to a manager. I have to get to this before I have some of that influence. And
mhm,
I think of some of my individual contributors that I work with, and they are the people, like you mentioned, that are
mhm,
helpful. And they probably have more influence on decisions I make than they realize. And so
mhm,
maybe it's they're not actually the one doing the changing, but as someone who leads them, those are the voices I look to as I make decisions to understand how does this impact us?
mhm.
Is this a change we should make? What is the day-to-day impacted, by? And that in itself, because they are someone who has spent that time and they're committed and they've become
Yep.
helpful. They've been willing to be a part of things. They have naturally become someone that has influence on me. And then I take that and I go to my leadership team and I'm talking to them and sharing here's insights from, everyone I work with. And I think that so many, yeah, so when you're an individual contributor, especially, I think it's really easy to think that you don't have that impact, that you're just there to do the day to day and that's it. But I don't think people always understand that as long as you have a good leader, the leaders are listening. They're listening to
Mhm,
things and your insights and your feedback, like that is all being taken and it is influencing decisions that are being made and that gets brought up and beyond. And the helpfulness that you mentioned, what makes me think of that is how when you are someone who allows yourself to be helpful to others, you are learning so much more than someone who is
Hmm.
not doing that. Because
Hmm.
oftentimes, when you are someone who is helpful, you might be given a project that you don't know 100% what you're doing, but that person's like, I trust you. You know, you're someone that can do
Right.
this. And all of a sudden, you have now learned a skill you maybe didn't know before, or you learned about a part of the company that you didn't know about before.
Hmm.
And so I think that being willing to be helpful can also be used as that on ramp, like you were talking about, because you have now exposed yourself to other
Hmm.
things and gained skills that other people maybe won't because they
Right.
didn't put themselves in those situations.
Right. Well, and Carrie, you bring up so many good points there. And when the one thing I would say too is, and I hope that young people coming into a company know this, there is such a thing as political capital. And so
Hmm.
um, I'll give you a couple examples. One is my wife and I were at Pizza Hut a couple of years ago having dinner
Love
one
Pizza
night.
Hut. It's my
You love
favorite
pizza?
pizza place, Chuck.
I love
Favorite pizza
Pizza Hut.
place.
I love Pizza Hut. My guilty pleasure, but Pizza Hut. The waitress is working, and she told me and my wife, she said, she goes, I've been here 16 years. I said,
Wow.
you've been here to this location 16 years? She goes, yeah. I said, I bet you get away with murder, don't you? She goes, oh, she goes, I work when I want. I tell the owner when I'm going to work. But that's political capital. That only comes with being helpful for a sustained period of time. And all of a sudden, you have political capital. I had a person who was going to leave the firm. This was many, 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 many years ago. He was invaluable. And after about 7 years, he was going to go to a very similar firm for a little more money. I said, you don't have any political capital over there. What are you doing?
Mm.
He said, what do you mean? I said, hey, I said, Pete, I said, oh, that's not his name, but I'm going to hide his name in
Yeah.
case he's listening. I said, Pete, I said, if you told me tomorrow that you were going to go to Hawaii for a month to go find yourself, I said, what do you think I'd do about it? He said, I don't know. I said, I wouldn't do a darn thing. I'd be waiting for you when you got back. I'd probably even pay your paycheck while you were gone. I said, that's political capital. I said, that only is built up with rapport and
Yeah.
continuity till you get to a point in a company where you can start calling um, you have agency over your schedule.
Yeah.
You may have to run off to Hawaii for a month and find yourself, and the company's just gonna put up with it. They're gonna back you. That's political capital, and you get that with longevity. So I think a lot of times people forget
Yeah.
that even though you do take your skill sets and all that to a new company, you don't take the rapport with you, and
Hmm.
and that's something you leave behind. So all
Yes.
right. I know we're coming up on time, so I want to share the bold story. So,
Yeah.
what I would encourage people to do, this is something I've become aware of only since I joined Eide Bailly, is we are an emailing nation. We email, we email, we
Mm.
email, and I think we got there for a certain reason. Before COVID and before Teams and all that, I think we just naturally emailed each other. That's just how we communicated. Part of it is we don't have each other's phone numbers, right?
Yeah.
When I joined Eide Bailly, though, I noticed certain people at Eide Bailly were calling me on Teams a lot. They weren't emailing me, they were calling me on Teams. And that stood out to me. It was like, huh, they didn't write me a message. They called me and talked to me. I said, I'm going to start doing that.
Mm.
And that was I picked up on that maybe a year and 3 months ago. And my advice to people, especially young people, is if you want to email someone, instead of emailing them, just call them up on Teams. You've got their number. So there's no excuse anymore. Before, Carrie, I don't have your cell number. I wouldn't know how to get a hold of you except through email. But since I've joined Ide Bailey and you're in the directory, I can
Hmm.
just call Carrie, type your name in and call you on Teams and we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's my bold. I would say be bold and make the call. Because I think
Yes.
what happens is if we email too much, all we're doing is turning everybody into a transaction.
Hmm.
Everybody's basically I'm taking the monkey off my back and I'm putting it on your back through an email, and you darn well better get back to me within 24 hours or I'm going to be mad.
Yep.
That's not a great way to build relationships. It's a terrible way to problem solve, especially if your
Hmm.
reading comprehension is as bad as mine. I read an email and I may not understand exactly what you're saying. I just need to talk to you. So I would encourage young people, everybody, start calling. Try calling 80% of the emails you would have sent.
Mm,
Use emails to send spreadsheets and Word docs and nothing more.
I like that. That's a good challenge for people. And I think it really focuses on putting the humanness back, which our world definitely needs more of as we've become more technology based. Like put the human back in the experiences and the relationships with people.
And I would say, Carrie, exactly. And I would say, even if you're an introvert, do it in the name
Hmm.
of problem solving, do it in the name of being bold, just do it uh, in the name of getting things done. Because you're
Hmm.
not always going to feel like calling somebody. You're just not going to be in that
Exactly.
mood. You're not in that mood all the time, right? And
Exactly.
sometimes you say, but I gotta call. If I'm gonna problem solve, I gotta call, because if I send an email, it's just gonna
Yep.
sit for 3 days. It's not gonna be read. It's gonna be, you know,
It makes me think to round it all out, Chuck, you said at the beginning, be bold, don't bolt. Don't bolt away from the phone call. Okay,
right.
well, thank you for your time today, Chuck. This was so great. I learned so much about you and it was just
Likewise,
fascinating.
I learned
It's
you can event plan. That's
yes, if you
I
ever need one, Chuck, I'm your person.
I tell you, to me, it's I always say it's the hardest job. It's the hardest job.
Well, like I said, we all have our natural skills for a reason, just like you don't want me to do your taxes in the spring. So you do my taxes, I'll plan your event, and the world will be round.
Yeah, it is, as much as I like to say that through brute force and repetition, maybe I would become good at event planning. I don't think so. I
There's
think
just some
that's
things we're not meant to do.
there are some things I'm not meant to dunk a basketball because I'm
Sure.
5'7", and I'm not meant to event plan. There, I can tell you that.
I think it's safe to say I'm not meant to dunk a basketball either. So we can agree on that one at least. Well, thank you again, Chuck. I really appreciate the time today, and I know so many people are going to be so excited to learn more about you and hear your story. So thanks for taking the time.
It's scary. Appreciate it.